The National Football League offseason is just full of change. We know that. Coaches, players, rosters. Some rosters turn over by as much as 50%. But sometimes it also means a renaissance or a coming back or a homecoming. Eric Bieniemy is back in the Chiefs' kingdom. This episode of Defending the Kingdom, as all of them, are brought to you by Ticketmaster, your new best friend as you glance ahead to 2026 and figure out how they can be your best friend.
Mahomes in the pocket will step up. He'll scramble 10, 5, Mahomes, diving touchdown, Kansas City.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mitch Holthus, voice of the Chiefs, along with senior team reporter Matt McMullen. He's back. Eric Bieniemy is back, and very soon we're going to have a chat with EB. But I sense some excitement throughout the Chiefs kingdom that EB is back in the chair being offensive coordinator.
Yeah, it is exciting. We've been talking about it a lot over the last few days, but you think about the things that make EB such a great coach, right? It's things like a mentality of finishing. It's a certain accountability that he expects from his players. It's how he kind of gets the best out of everyone. And if you look back over his time with the Chiefs, and certainly his time as offensive coordinator, look at some of the players that had a lot of success here that you can look at him and say, I think he got the best out of that player, right? And I'm excited for next year with EB at the helm and seeing what he can get out of this roster. We're going to make some additions in the offseason, going to make some changes, but I'm excited, I think, first and foremost, to see what he can get out of the players that are currently here. How can he help these players take their game to the next level? We'll ask him about that when he stops by.
We love, as fans, to look at the game numerically. We love analytics. We love to look at it as if we're playing Madden. And honestly, this is a very tough sport, played at the highest level on the planet, and you cannot discount toughness and discipline. And that is the two main things, in my opinion, that Eric Bieniemy brings to the Kansas City Chiefs. He took it in Chicago, UCLA, Washington. We're going to talk with EB about all those steps of where he has been, 3 places in 3 years since he left here. But he also left here with a couple Super Bowl rings. But you cannot discount or displace toughness and discipline in the game of football at any level, and especially in the National Football League. We're going to get into that here, even in some areas where we can break it down numerically where those things get manifested. But let's be just real honest here before we go around the world. If there are 2 characteristics of the 2 teams right now that are going to play for Super Bowl 60 in the championship game for the Lombardi Trophy, if there's a similarity between the Seattle Seahawks and the New England Patriots, it is the fact that they come across as 2 of the most disciplined and 2 of the toughest teams in the NFL. Just watch them play. And it was discipline and toughness by New England, to me, that won the AFC Championship. Even discipline where Denver should have kicked the field goal, go up 10-0. But Mike Vrabel has brought a resurgence of those 2 areas back to the New England Patriots, and it's shown on the field this year.
Yeah, because those are the margins. Everyone in the NFL is good. Everybody's good, right? I mean, I think it's kind of funny to think about how even players that are on practice squads were the best player at their high school, like a legendary player from their hometown. Everyone in the NFL is good. So how do you find a way to make up the difference? It's in the margins. And that's what Vrabel has been so good at with New England and really throughout his career, even when he was with Tennessee, is finding ways to get the most out of your players, to be the most disciplined team on the field. And hopefully the other team makes a mistake. And frankly, the Chiefs for years and years were that team. And I think we can continue to be that team, and EB can certainly help with that. I think about like training camps over the years where you get out there and you hear one voice among all the others, and it's the loudest one. It's EB yelling at his guys to finish. I think about when he was just even the running backs coach. Like there might be a play at one end of the field, and the guys are expected to run all the way down to the other end of the field to finish the play in the end zone. It's like a mentality thing, and I think that helps when you are in crunch time games. And the reality is the Chiefs did not finish very well last year, and I think there's no harm in adding a coach like this who is all about finishing, right? All about the details, all about discipline. And I think he almost kind of brings like a high school or college mentality to the NFL where you're dealing with professionals. Which is also
what Mike Vrabel has done.
Absolutely. Like you're dealing with professionals, but you're still their coach, right? And that's kind of a hard line to thread, but he has figured it out, and he gets the best out of his guys. It's really what I keep thinking about when I think of EB. He truly gets the best out of his players, even if it's not the most fun all the time, right? But when you're hoisting the Lombardi at the end of the year, you think about, hey, that guy made me the best player I can be.
And the run of 7 straight AFC championship games and the phenomenal run, and in many ways historic, that the Chiefs have done up until the 2025 season, there has been more discipline and toughness there than meets the eye. Actually, our quarterback, you can get caught up in the numbers. A lot of people now are attracted to the NFL because of its popularity. So that's even included a whole list of and a growth in the folks that work in the industry. But with that can be some focus drift on what really matters in the National Football League. The numbers become cause and effect numbers. And so I can look at numbers and say that will dictate the play. And sometimes it might. In many times, it is the discipline and toughness of a team. We just saw it and saw it throughout the playoffs, and we'll see it again in Super Bowl 60. Discipline and toughness, and to your point, is the difference between winning and losing. And we think that that's what Eric Bieniemy brings back to the table with the Kansas City Chiefs. All right, that being said, we're going to get into some ways where that discipline and toughness actually manifests itself in the numbers. That's where it's a cause and effect here. But let's go around the world before we get into too much here.
I'm glad we have some around the worlds. We had 0 around the worlds last time. It was weird.
Yeah.
First time in a long time.
I don't want to say we don't have a 0. Chiefs don't wear a 0.
Uh-huh.
There's zeros around the league that are in my head. I'm not going to mention them. Can't do it. But so.
Well, we have 3 today.
We're back to Jan Stenerud. I love it.
Back to Jan.
One of the numbers that is retired. You won't see a Chief wear number 3 anymore.
Yep.
Okay.
We have Chris checking in from St. George, Utah.
Yeah, home of Utah. No, it's Utah Tech, I think.
Okay.
I think Utah Tech is there.
What
the Thunderbirds.
The Thunderbirds.
Yeah.
Okay.
Used to be St. George Junior College, I think, or Dixie Junior College, and then it became Utah Tech. I might be off here, but I think Utah Tech Thunderbirds might look me up.
Let us know, Chris.
Yeah.
Victoria is checking in from right down the road in Blue Springs.
All right.
Yeah, Blue Springs.
Wonder if she's a Wildcat or a Jaguar.
Good question. Let us know.
Very
Victoria.
key.
And then lastly, Penny is listening from Lincoln, Missouri. You familiar with Lincoln, Missouri?
Lincoln University? Where's Lincoln, Missouri?
I don't know. Hopefully I didn't write that down incorrectly.
Lincoln University's in Jefferson City, the Blue Tigers.
Well, Lincoln, Missouri. Penny, let me know if I got that wrong. But Lincoln, Missouri, they're going to be binge watching Super Bowl 54, 57, and 58 this year instead of watching Super Bowl 60, which sounds like kind of a good idea. This whole playoff run has been weird. Like, obviously, I've watched every second of the playoffs this year, but it's not like a fun experience. I'm not like, wow, I'm glad I have all this time to watch these games. I don't know. What do you think?
No, I tell you what I've liked about this is I'm working on some long-form projects.
Yeah.
And I haven't been able to do that in really probably 4 decades because what people don't realize, maybe or they did, it was that when we went on these runs up until like 3 years ago, I'm doing college basketball.
Yeah.
So I'd be doing 20 basketball games in 25 days.
It's crazy.
And it was crazy. And it wasn't, so tense. Like, think of the weather last weekend. You're trying to get from Chicago to, I don't know, Morgantown, West Virginia. And anyway, I just don't miss it. But one thing that has been impressed upon me in watching, and I've watched every playoff game. Mm-hmm. I think I've watched every snap of every playoff game, is the fact that what did we just do? These games are so tough, and the National Football League is so intense. Yes, there's intrigue, but there's also such exact performance in it. It's like watching the Olympic Games every time there's a game. And then I thought, what did we just do?
Yeah.
That's been the impression upon me. I was with my 93-year-old dad. My wife and I were with my 93-year-old dad watching the conference championship games, every bit of it. And I was so intrigued with the Denver game because of the weather, the elements. And the elements become I've been in discussions. Throw away any analytics of that game. Really.
Uh-huh.
Like, do you kick the field goal to go up 10-0 if you're Sean Payton? Well, let's look at the analytics. Yeah, it would be, well, if I know the weather's going to deteriorate like it did, and they should know that, especially in Denver, and that's one of the things we might discuss on a future podcast is how you're prepared for everything. And the weather has some analytics to it, which is like, you better kick this field goal because in an hour, this field's going to look like your backyard with 6 inches of snow.
Yeah.
But the point is, I saw just how intense every play was, and I thought, What did we do for a 7-year period?
Yeah. I mean, I think for me,
Blows me away.
it's a great point. I think for me, what watching all these games has done has added even more perspective. Now, you and I try really hard to maintain perspective throughout all the success. Try really hard and really enjoy and appreciate every single step in the process of winning all the conference titles and all the playoff games and the Super Bowls. But the reality is when you do it so many times, at times it's hard to have that perspective until you don't have it anymore. And yeah, I mean, I think watching the playoff games and reflecting on going to 3 straight Super Bowls, winning 2 of them, winning 3 Super Bowls in a 5-year span, Patrick Mahomes being 17-4 in the postseason in his career, it's crazy. And the intensity of all these games, I think about all the intense playoff games that we've had a chance to experience over the last several years. And more often than not, almost every time the Chiefs came out on top and won those games. My favorite run being a 2023 run. That one just sticks out to me because of the nature of it, going on the road like we had to. I don't know. To your point, the perspective has been immense during this stretch. And what it makes me think about is how much I'm looking forward to this offseason, attacking these problems, and hopefully getting back to that moment, because I don't think you and I are wired to just sit there and watch the NFL playoffs without the Chiefs. It's not nearly as fun.
No, I don't even know the verb to give it. It's just been interesting.
Yeah.
But I don't want to do it again.
No, neither do I. No, neither do I. And you know what? Like, I think next year, hopefully when the Chiefs are in the postseason, hopefully making a run to the Super Bowl, I think this time right now and kind of like what we've experienced over the last several months, we're going to have that renewed perspective, I think. And, you know, I don't think it's limited to us. I think Coach Reed a few days ago said change can be good, right? Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes perspective can be good, that you have a season like this. It allows everybody from the coaching staff to the front office to the players to think a little bit about what just happened and how do we avoid an outcome like that? How do we learn from it, right? And the perspective of knowing, man, we know this team can be great because we've seen it. How do we get back to that as soon as possible?
Yeah, the best way to change is on your own volition, and that goes back to discipline here. But this league will, even in your personal life, you know, you're trying to get better and look at it each day in every way, physically, mentally, spiritually. But the National Football League will take you to your knees. They will make you change, and we saw that this year.
Humbling,
and
yes.
It's a very humbling game, and so that's. You know, that accentuates your point here because Coach Reed is a guy that's always wired to change on his own volition. But now all of a sudden we got, you know, hit in the nose with this. And so we get ready to go in 2026. Now, the cause and effect part of, because this is where I think we can get our thoughts skewed on the National Football League. Sometimes numbers can influence the action, but many times action can influence the numbers. And that's where the discipline and toughness comes into play, and you're saying in the margins. These have become intangibles that you see the tangible result. You and I have both looked at 2 different areas that I think that comes into play and where it potentially pertains to EB, and we're going to talk to Eric here in just a second, so hang on. But I'm going to let you dive into yours first, and then I'm going to dive into mine where, again, this discipline and toughness can lead to numbers that lead to victory. So, again, cause and effect, what do you got?
So this is an example of how Mitch and I, over the last several weeks, have had time to dive into stuff. And truly, this is me diving into something like at 4 o'clock on a Friday because I don't have a whole lot else to do right now, right? So this is not an end-all, be-all stat.
You did coach New Mexico State to an undefeated season.
I've been playing a lot of NCAA football 12, a lot of it.
The Matt
that part has been
Hatton
fun.
project is full-fledged.
We're building a program there. This stat, though, is not an end-all, be-all, but I think what it does is it illustrates part of where this team can get better moving into the future. And I've been adamant about how I think we really need an explosive running game next year. I think we had elements of a running game last year that were productive, particularly short yardage. We were really good in short yardage last year, but we were not very explosive with our running game. We need to have an explosive running game next year. And here's a stat that kind of accentuates that. So the Chiefs last year had just 396 yards passing off play action plays. So play action passes, just 396 yards through the air last year for the Chiefs. That was tied with Cincinnati for the fewest in the NFL. All right. The top 5 in that category, the Rams led the NFL in passing yards on play action. Lions were number 2, Seahawks number 3, Bears number 4, Bills number 5. I get the Lions missed the playoffs, but the Lions had an effective offense this year. The common denominator with all those teams is they moved the football, right? Yeah. Now you might say, okay, well maybe the Chiefs never really did that. I mean, the Chiefs maybe never really had much of a play-action passing game. And I would say you were wrong because if you look at these numbers, I use Pro Football Reference for these data points. They started tracking this in 2019. Good year for the Chiefs. So in 2019, the Chiefs were 4th in the NFL in this category in passing yards off play action. 2020, they were 12th. 2021, 4th again. 2022, 4th in the NFL in this category. Common denominator for that time, Eric Bieniemy was here. Mm-hmm. Now, 2023, 15th in the NFL. 2024, 18th in the NFL. And this past year, 32nd in the NFL. What am I trying to say with all this? I don't necessarily think the Chiefs need to be number 1 in the league in passing yards off play action. But what I think this shows is a way the Chiefs' explosive running game can help this team next year beyond just the obvious of explosive running plays is it forces defenses to respect your play-action game, and that opens everything else up. When you don't have an effective play-action passing game, it makes life so much harder for Patrick Mahomes. So much harder. And I think this offense really could be so much better next year, not only with an explosive running game, racking up 20, 25-yard runs at different times in a game, but also because the play-action passing game demands respect. And if you have a play-action passing game that forces linebackers and safeties to creep up and to hesitate for a moment because their running back could pop a run for 20 yards, that means that Rashee Rice or Xavier Worthy are going to be wide open down the field because they have that extra step in the play-action passing game. This also isn't mutually exclusive with our RPO game because I know we like to use RPOs a lot. The Chiefs had the most passing yards in the NFL on RPOs this last year. Well, if you look at previous years when the Chiefs were still top 5, top 10 in passing yards on play action, they were still top 10 in RPOs. Mm-hmm. So there is a balance there that you can find. You don't have to get rid of the RPOs to have more of an effective play action passing game. Really, to me, again, it just gets back to the need to have an explosive running game next year, and I think this stat really illustrates that. And I think having Eric Bieniemy here helps that as well, because what is Eric's background? He's a running backs coach. Mm-hmm. He's a former running back. Mm-hmm. And look at what he did in Chicago as their running backs coach last year. I mean, DeAndre Swift had the best year of his career. And then Kyle Monangai, a rookie 7th-round pick, had nearly 1,000 scrimmage yards last year for Chicago. I mean, I think Coach Bieniemy was a huge part of their success as an offense. Yeah, Ben Johnson played a big role in that, obviously, scheming the whole thing up. But what Bieniemy got out of those running backs was crucial to that scheme. And I think looking ahead to this year, trying to develop a more explosive running game that then leads to a play-action passing game and a passing game that opens things up downfield, having Bieniemy back in the fold is a big part of that.
Well, and your point here that people, I think, need to kind of think, and you and I both here, we think of play-action passing as under center.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of it.
Like bootlegs, stuff like
that. But RPO,
yeah,
by its very definition, is play action.
Uh-huh.
So, and it's a matter of being explosive in the run game. If you want to get excited or thinking, what could we do? Go back and watch 2017 and 18 with Kareem Hunt in his prime.
Absolutely, yes.
And those were RPO plays, and a lot of them were. But he was explosive, and it turned everything loose with that team, and that was with Alex Smith at quarterback. So or at least 17 was. With 18, it was Pat. But it's not just under center play action passing, and so, but it's also Pat being even going back in a renaissance of his own because it's an art form. If you're going to run an RPO play action pass, that dive handoff, the mesh handoff, whether it's a handoff or not, has got to be so precise. And so I think that's part of where the discipline and the comes into play, discipline, toughness. Now, let me get into mine. You ready?
Yeah.
All right.
Let's go.
This is offensive penalties. Take away defensive penalties and special teams penalties. And this is where the toughness and discipline the things that are in the margins, to use your phrase, become then something numeric. All right. The glorious year of 2019, Super Bowl 54, you just alluded to it. Only 5 teams that year had fewer offensive penalties than the Kansas City Chiefs. Let's go to 2022, and we love 2023, you and I both, because that was about toughness and discipline.
Yeah, we willed
ways.
ourselves to a championship.
Although in this
year.
category, the numbers aren't there, but they are there in 2022. The Kansas City Chiefs in 2022, which was the last year that Eric Bieniemy was offensive coordinator.
Number 1 offense in the league, too.
The least penalized offensive team in the NFL, tied 2 other teams, 35 penalties, 295 yards. In 2019, there were only 384 yards in offensive penalties. Now let's jump ahead to 2025. In 2025, the Chiefs had 455. They had the 4th most offensive penalties. But, again, this is where you look inside the numbers, because they'll list the most penalized team in the league or the most. Well, it's not just the amount of penalties. It's the yards from the penalties. How many penalties are there? So the Chiefs had the 5th most offensive holds last year. Okay, those are 10. Those are drive killers. You now have 2nd and 20. Okay, you now have 3rd and 12. You got 1st and 20, and so a lot to overcome there. So the Chiefs had the 4th most offensive penalties. And this is not on Nags necessarily, because people say, well, that's all on Matt Nagy. And I'm not going to say it's all for Eric Bieniemy and all against Matt Nagy. But it's just a point to be taken throughout for to ponder.
Yeah.
Because Matt's very disciplined.
Yeah.
But the fact is, 455 yards in offensive penalties alone. Now, each 100 yards of penalty yardage equals 7 points, right? That's a way to look at it, and a way a lot of football coaches at every level looks at it. 455 yards equals 31.5 points.
Man.
Now, you're not going to have 0 penalties, but if you did, well, keep in mind now, 7 or 11 losses were by 3 points or less. All right, let's just take 2022 and take 2025. 455 yards of offensive penalties in 2025, minus the 295 offensive yard penalties of 2022, equals you'd have 11 points to scatter around. Now, so that gives you 3 wins on this stat alone. Just this stat. We can get into all the other stuff, but you can get 3 games back and go from 6-11 to 9-8 with a reduction of offensive penalties. As offensive penalty yards, I should say. So that goes back to discipline and toughness, understanding, and if you just reduce by half your offensive holding penalties, that could lead to as many as 2 or 3 wins.
Off the top of my head, I think we had 4 games last year where we were penalized double-digit times. The Jags game comes to mind, a game that we lost by 3 points, that penalty after penalty after penalty in crucial moments that allowed Jacksonville to hang around and eventually win. The Dallas game comes to mind, where we were right there with Dallas the whole way, matching them blow for blow. But particularly in the first half, we would have a big play. I think Mahomes hit Pacheco for a screen for a big play. We're in the red zone. Holding all the way back. Now it's 1st and 20. And, yeah, it's hard to overcome that. All the pass interference calls. I know we're talking about
offense. And
to
your point, this accentuates another point, because this only counts the penalty yardage. It doesn't count the opportunity cost of the 40-yard gain.
It happened.
This is just the 10-yard penalty. That's in essence it's a great point, but that's like a 50-yard penalty.
Exactly.
So it's even worse.
And in all these games where we were right there. I mean, you mentioned all the games that we lost by 3 points. It's one thing if you're penalized 10 times and you lose 40-10. It's like, all right, you're still probably going to lose anyway. But we had so many games this year where we were right there with the opponent. I really don't look at any of our games last season and say that team was just way better than we were. I really don't. I guess you could look at the Buffalo game, and Buffalo kind of had us that day. But otherwise, at least when Mahomes was playing, I don't look at a single game and say, yeah, that team was way better than we were the whole way. It's just routinely, unfortunately, we were the less disciplined team with penalties. And we allowed the other team to take advantage of that. And we have to get back to being like a 2022 team that it's the opposite. You are waiting for the other team to make a mistake. You're not beating yourself, right? And the Chiefs, unfortunately, I think we beat ourselves on the scoreboard far too many times last year. Got to get back to the opposite.
And to your point, we were 1-5 in the AFC West.
Yeah.
Of those 5 losses, how many did you go, wow, God, they were just so much better than we were?
None of them.
None of those. And that's not to be disrespectful to our division teams, who 2 of them in the playoffs and 1 played for the AFC Championship. But your point's well taken there that if you just – and again, the NFL will force you to change or you do it on your own volition.
And I'll add one thing. Speaking of Denver, so we had the lead against Denver and the ball in the fourth quarter. I can't remember if it was the drive that would have tied the game or when we had the lead, but we had the ball in the fourth quarter, either in a tie game or with the lead. The very first play was a false start.
Yep.
We got to get back to not having that kind of thing happen.
Yep. And it's tough to talk about this. This isn't fun for us, but we're looking at it analytically, and so is our coaching staff, so is Andy Reid. This is the stuff they look at.
Yeah.
And so you can just see where discipline and toughness become the fulcrum of the matter, and then that leads to the numbers instead of the numbers leading back to that. So let's bring him back for sure. We had a chance earlier to talk with Eric Bieniemy, the Chiefs' new old new offensive coordinator. There is an element of excitement back into the Chiefs' kingdom because he's back. Eric Bieniemy is back. Now, I don't know what you call home, La Puente, California, or Louisiana, or Boulder, Colorado. But we think you're home. Oh, yeah. What about being back in the Chiefs' kingdom?
Oh, it feels great being back. All the familiar faces. I get to see Coach Sid every day now, but it's great being back. Just being in an element where I was here for 10 years. Our family has called this place home, and now we have an opportunity to reunite and get with some good people that you miss and just want to be a part of something great. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited. You know, I got this nervous energy. I'm twitching, ready to jump into everything. But it's day one, so just trying to figure everything out and reestablish myself in the building.
I'm sure the last few days have been pretty surreal being back here after spending so much time here previously. What were the emotions like on day one walking back in this building?
You know what? It's been pretty high, but Shafe, has a way of ruining it. But it's been good. Just getting an opportunity to sit down and talk to some of the coaches, just to get a feel for what things have taken place. But on top of that, just to reunite with friends and family members. And that's been a great aspect of this, because not only because, in this profession, we spend more time with coaches than we do our own families. And so these guys have been a part of my family for a number of years. And I know I haven't been here in a couple years, but they never left. They've just been distant relatives. Now we're back reunited. And so I'm excited just to sit down and continue these talks and just continue the journey from here on out.
Speaking of being back with family, you're back with Patrick.
Yes.
Your thought about, I'm going to be with Pat again.
You know what? Fired up, excited, very excited, I should say. Just having an opportunity just to see him going through his rehab process. And, the thing I love about Pat, which you always love, just the competitive spirit. And obviously he's in there. Julie's doing an outstanding job with him. He's so fired up. If Pat could come out there and do whatever he can tomorrow, he would show it off and be ready to roll. But I'm excited about that opportunity just to reunite and just tap into him and just, start talking through things just to see exactly where he is. But like I said, I'm excited.
When you look back on your first tenure here as offensive coordinator, what are you most proud of when you look back on that time?
You know what? I guess just the things that we accomplished. I don't know necessarily of anything that really stands out, but probably just the growth and watching some of our younger players grow into becoming the professional players that they've become and growing into the professional. I mean, just the men of high standards and men of excellence and watching them become father figures. That's been the fun part about this, just watching the growth process overall. But, more than anything, like I said, we were very blessed due to all the hard work that we endured, putting the blood, sweat, and tears into it, but just the evolution of the growth process and watching these young men develop and grow over the years. That's, if anything, that's what more than anything that you could be proud of, because, I mean, they're outstanding citizens, proud fathers. I mean, that's the fun part.
That being said, what did you learn from the Washington experience, the UCLA experience, the Chicago experience? You've got this 3 years of adding to your package to bring here.
You know what? I think more than anything, just navigating, articulating, and finding your way on how to communicate, making sure that everybody's understanding the exact messaging. On top of this, there's different ways that you can approach a game and how you game plan. Learning the culture and the environment. You just can't go in there and try and develop a culture. You got to make sure that you can fit in, because these guys have been there for a number of years. You want to make sure that you're not interrupting anything, but also adding to it. I think there's a number of things, just how you communicate, how you associate. One thing that doesn't change is the ability to just let people know who you are. One thing I want to do since being back, I want to reach out to every player and just make sure that I have an opportunity to get to know them. Because obviously, yes, there are some players that have been here for a number of years, but there's a lot of new. And there's a lot of guys I don't know. So I need to establish those lines of communication, getting to know those people and developing the relationships so we can grow together. But that's one of the main things, that if I can do it a little differently, just the ability just to make sure that those relationships could be established a little bit more.
And looking at last year specifically, you obviously had a lot of success in Chicago and with the Bears and under Ben Johnson. Is there anything that you learned from that experience and learning from Coach Johnson that you are looking to bring here?
You know what? I had a great deal of fun working with that staff. First of all, a very diverse, a very good group of men that I had an opportunity to work with as far as our coaching staff. I thought Ben Johnson did a hell of a job, but just the approach. Obviously, there's different ways, like I said, there's different ways to skin a cat. You know, the philosophy was a little bit different from what I've been used to here in the past. But one thing that I appreciate about him was that he stayed true to form throughout his whole stand as far as the things that he wanted us to achieve. And the thing that I enjoyed the most is just watching the players grow to enjoy not just what he was preaching, but believing in the messaging and just putting it on tape. Our guys had a great belief that they can win, and it was a lot of fun watching them go through that growth process. But one thing I learned more than anything is just there's different ways and different approaches in how you go about game planning, which was a lot of fun. We ran the ball a whole bunch.
Yeah, I saw that. And ran it well, by the way. We were watching from afar. But okay, that leads into this. And one thing you've always been about is discipline.
Yes.
And toughness.
Yes.
And how this game never changes. We can look at numbers and analytics, but that's one thing Matt and I have been talking about. How much of a goal do you have to bring back to us in 2026 and beyond? Discipline and toughness.
Yes. I think more than anything, it's just like my approach has never changed when it comes to that. We got to make sure that we got the right people in the building, because they got to have the right mindset to fit the standard of excellence that we want. On top of that, you know, I want guys that understand that not only do we have to be disciplined, but we got to be willing to sacrifice for the next man. On top of that, there has to be a toughness about how you approach everything. You got to have a game plan on when you're going to cross that line when you enter the building, because what do you want to establish today that's going to help us moving forward? I think that mindset, you know, just having that disciplined approach on how we're going to detail everything and making sure that we're not taking anything or any moment for granted. All of those things combined are going to help us to get to where we need to go. But more importantly, that starts with me establishing a relationship with those guys to get them to start thinking about that approach. And so, like I said, it's day one, but more than anything, it's the first day of tomorrow. So I want to make sure that we're getting everything in order and making sure we're taking on the right approach with everything.
Now, you mentioned that you guys ran the ball a whole lot last year in Chicago. I mean, you're a former running back, you're a former running backs coach. How much of wanting to run the football is in your DNA as an offensive coordinator?
I mean, here's the thing, and here's the thing. So first of all, I love running the ball. There's something about throwing the ball too, because when I was in Washington, the thought of running the ball really didn't enter my mind because we threw the hell out of it. So, but I will say this, this game is cyclical, and the way the evolution of the game has changed. And so one thing that hasn't changed, you got to make sure that you're playing to your strengths. One of our strengths last year was our O-line and our backs. And don't get me wrong, we had a talented quarterback and some talented receivers. And those guys did a heck of a job running the ball. On top of that, our O-line did a heck of a job of widening some holes for them. But what it all did was also complement everything that we can do in the pass game. But more than anything, the game has not changed. You still got to run the ball efficiently and effectively to win the championship. But on top of that, you got to throw it to score touchdowns. So that's what this game is about, and we got to make sure that we can get back to that mode.
That being said, and without naming names here, to construct the running back room for us going into 26, what would be a right approach? Because we're going to see free agency, draft, the guys that are here getting better. But what have you seen for a running back room, not just as runners, but as receivers, to be impactful in this league?
Well, one thing, in the approaches that we've always taken on here, you want the best people who happen to be the best football players, that can play the running back position. I think that has never changed because first and foremost, you want guys that are smart enough, all right, that can handle the capacity of what we're going to put on to them as far as the game planning. On top of that, they got to have the intestinal fortitude to pick up a blitz any chance that we have because our quarterback is going to drop back and throw it a lot. But we also need guys who can run between the tackles and create plays, not only with their legs, but also, too, understanding that sometimes I got to run through somebody to make something happen. But when it's all said and done, we also got to be creative enough for getting those guys out of the backfield and creating one-on-one matchups. So there's a unique ebb and flow in what we got to do. But when it's all said and done, we got to find the right people. And I think if we find the right person who has all that combined, we've seen it happen before. You know what I mean? We just got to make sure that we're not losing sight on those little things to help us to build it the right way.
Now, Coach Reid had his presser a few days ago where he talked about your hiring, and he seemed just really fired up, like he was in a great mood. How excited are you just to collaborate with him now going into next year?
I'm fired up, man. I'm excited. I mean, it just seems like old times. So I'm fired up. I'm excited just to have this opportunity to work with Coach Reid. Obviously, Coach Reid has been someone that has been in my life for a long time. I'm excited about working with a brilliant mind, but on top of that, just sitting back in that room and grinding with him. Now, I will say this, I've lost a few pounds, so I don't know what it's gonna look like, because, we both we don't waste groceries, so it's gonna be fun, sitting in those long meetings, creating game plans together, and sharing a few meals together as well.
I want to jump back to something, though, because I always say, find me a good football team with a bad offensive line, it'll be the first one.
Yes, ain't that a true statement? So
Creed Humphrey's still here.
Yes.
Trey Smith's still here.
Yes.
What about building an offensive line with guys that you're going to get to know, but having those guys as anchors?
Playing offensive football, everything has, one thing that has not changed, you still got to do it with the guys up front. And so the only way you're going to build success, those guys up front got to be the staple in what you do. And so if you got the right guys up front, we have a chance. And obviously, Veach has done a great job with that over the years, and I'm sure he's going to continue to do that. But when it's all said and done with, we got one of the best O-line coaches in the business, and Coach Heck has done a tremendous job in this whole tenure while he's been here. So we expect that to continue, and we expect to continue to build, but that's the development process that we're in, and we're going to continue to chop wood and make it happen.
From my point of view, if there's like one word that kind of describes your mentality as a coach, it's finish. Kind of seems like the word you're always screaming at the guys, right, at training camp.
Can't wait for St. Joe.
Yeah.
Yell it
Finish.
600 times.
Where's that mentality come from? And as a coach, how important is that to instill that in your guys, the need to finish?
Well, I guess finish comes from just your work ethics. If you're going to start something, you might as well finish it. And it's amazing, guys need to learn how to finish. Everybody claims to be a great player, but, I'll never forget this. When I was playing in the league, I thought I was a great finisher until 1994. We went out to practice against the San Francisco 49ers, in which they beat us 3 times that year, in the preseason, the regular season, and in the Super Bowl. But I had an opportunity to watch Jerry Rice, and I've shared this story over the years. You'll see Jerry Rice, I remember the 7-on-7 period, he catches a slant, takes it 80 yards, jogs back. 2 plays later, he may catch a pass, but he scores and finishes and jogs back. And that's when it hit me. It was like one of those moments where you realize, wow, this ain't by chance that you see Jerry Rice making all these plays, all these great plays on Sunday. Now, he learned how to make second effort a habit because he rehearsed everything throughout the course of practice. And so his deal was making sure he was making those dynamic catches, but on top of that, he was finishing everything in the end zone. So that's why he's one of the best. And so I learned that, and that has carried me throughout my career, not only as a player, but also as a coach, because there's a lot of great players in this league, but there's not a lot of great finishers, And so you teach guys, they have to learn how to finish the process, And so guys need to understand, just like actors, they do a great job of rehearsing everything what they're going to put on tape. You got to rehearse what you're going to do in practice so you can put it on display come game day. And that's important. And so that's why it's always about finishing what you do.
You had a 33-yard catch in that Super Bowl, by the way. Did you get the ball enough against the Niners in that game?
You know what? We had some pretty good players. We had Natron Means and Ronnie Harmon. And for the record, Eric Bieniemy did have the longest play from scrimmage for the San Diego Chargers. Other than that, me and Natron been talking about that, man. I should have started. But I'm just joking. But they had a great team. They got us. They had the best. They had the greatest team in the world that year.
To say it's awesome to have you back is understatement. But one final thing, what would you tell the Chiefs Kingdom? Because hundreds of thousands of people are going to watch this going, what's he going to bring back to us? What's he got?
You know what? I'm excited about? And this has nothing to do with me going out there and providing anything for the team. I'm looking forward to the national anthem when we can say the home of the Chiefs. Because for the past few years, I've been mumbling it to myself, covering up my face like, Chiefs, so that's what I'm excited about. But I'll say this, my whole point is just making sure that we can always make sure that our guys are committed, okay? They got to be willing to sacrifice. On top of that, understanding the importance of being accountable. And then on top of that, it's about making sure we can become consistent with our work ethic. And so those are the things that I'm looking forward to and instilling and hoping that these guys will buy into. And I know because of the leadership of Pat Mahomes and some of the other guys, I know that's going to become an infectious behavior.
I mean, there's some energy to the guy. You just get lifted when you're around him, or feel like you'd better do it better, because there's a Marine drill sergeant with EB.
Yes.
You sense that?
Definitely.
And he's such a good man. Like Elijah went to my son's school. I think my son taught him, and what they've gone through. And Mia's such a great gal. But there's a lot to these guys that. And a lot that EB brings back into the building immediately. And I think Coach alluded to that earlier in his presser.
And I think the continuity is exciting because he knows how things work around here. He knows what the standard is. He knows what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And he's been here for success. He knows what success looks like here. And he knows what it takes to find success here, right? And I think that continuity is exciting. He knows what it's like to work with Coach Reed, what Coach Reed expects, all that stuff. I think sometimes when you bring people in that have no familiarity with this at all, there's some growing pains, right? There's a process of kind of learning the culture and how things work. There's no learning process with him. With EB, he's already started thinking about the 2026 season. And that's exciting if you're a Chiefs fan, because we want to move on from this thing as fast as possible, right? I mean, I don't want to talk about the 2025 season anymore in the areas that we have to get better. I want to get to getting better. And the fact that Coach Bieniemy knows this system, knows this place, knows the building, knows you and me, like he just knows the whole thing, right? And I think that helps when you're trying to get back to our expectations as soon as possible.
And yet, and I saw this with Matt Nagy, and keep in mind, we won a Super Bowl with Matt Nagy as offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
And went to back-to-back Super Bowls.
Yes, and we wish him all the best, absolutely.
But when Nags went to Chicago, he was here. He was Pat's caddy, right? In 2017, basically, he and Kafka were Pat's caddy. And then he has the 4 years in Chicago, which he actually did a better job there than people realize.
Super underrated, yeah.
But he brought – so here's my point, to parallel what EB – and we just heard it from EB. He learned something in Washington. He learned something at UCLA. He learned something with Chicago. So he has the familiarity, but he also has what we talked about earlier in the podcast, is that he is either changing, learning. And so he has brought even some different perspective into the building than he had when he left in 2022.
Definitely. And particularly, I think last year with Ben Johnson is kind of exciting. Ben Johnson is kind of part of this wave of new young coaches that have a lot of ideas and a lot of thoughts and schemes that are different from years past, right? And I think it's exciting for him to come here and to take a few things he really liked from that experience and sprinkle them in here. There's no harm in that at all, right? And I think that's exciting because, particularly talking about the need to get back to like an explosive running game, one thing that Chicago did so well last year, like I talked about earlier, is run the football. And if you're trying to find ways to run the football more effectively, there's really no better person right now to ask than EB, who coached the running backs in Chicago under Ben Johnson. So I think that's exciting and curious to see kind of what parts of that offense he's able to bring to Kansas City next year.
And we'll close this way, because as fans and people who follow the league, many times we can kind of put the offensive coordinator by himself, and honestly, it's a collaborative effort. All 32 teams, it has to be. You cannot – and so like a quarterback many times will get too much credit and too much blame. A coordinator, whether it's offensive, defensive, special team, can get too much credit and too much blame. It's a collaborative effort. Chad O'Shea coming back to this building, hopefully going to get Chad on a podcast, to me is a super positive to bring him back in the building 20-some years later, and he's been an offensive coordinator, a guy who is very bright. And talk about bringing new ideas in.
Yeah.
He's got all kinds of ideas, including those years in New England where they went on their second surge run. He was there for that. But you look at Joe Blameyer and you look at David Girardi, and you could go down the hallway. I'm thinking of Andy Heck and the others. Coach Melvin's still here. In the fact that now you put it's still all those minds working together with one of the greatest head coaches with an offensive mind, one of the greatest offensive minds in the history of the planet. That's still here, but you bring in other inputs, and we just have to understand it's a collaborative effort of all these offensive minds surrounding one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play in this league.
Yeah, it takes everybody, and I'm excited about the people that are here. I'm excited about the people that we've brought in, and it's an opportunity to take a step back, look at what didn't work last year. Let's fix that, and let's look at what did work last year, and let's build on that, right? Mm-hmm. And having the people that we have in this building, I have no doubt they're going to do that. That's what they've been doing over the last several weeks when the team has not been in the playoffs. They've been thinking about next season. They've been doing a scheme eval. They've been figuring out how this time next year we're doing a Super Bowl preview and not talking about last year.
It's about discipline, and it's about toughness. This game will always be that way. And so discipline and toughness has come into the building as Eric Bieniemy is back.